In this video, I'm going to show you how to do an oil change on this Chevy Silverado 2500 with the 6.0 liter engine. Let's get started. Once you've made your way underneath the vehicle, you'll see the oil filter and the drain plug pretty much in the same location, right by this exhaust pipe here. Here's the drain plug. Use a 15mm wrench or socket if that's what you have, but a wrench fits a lot better just because of the clearance here. Break it free. Go counterclockwise to do that. They shouldn't be very tight. And now, as I remove it, first of all, I have a collection bucket ready to catch my fluid. Second of all, keep in mind, it's probably going to want to spray on the exhaust. So just keep in mind, you want to aim the collection bucket in this area so that as it comes down, it can catch all the fluid. As I remove this drain plug, I'm keeping pressure on it so that when it gets to the last thread, it doesn't come flying out. I can control when the flow of oil starts. Okay, I'm on the last thread. I'm going to pull it out quickly. There we go. Again, it's going to get on the exhaust, but that's okay. We'll clean it off later. Definitely make sure you clean that off thoroughly. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of smoke once you start up the truck. Let this drain completely until it's down to a drip. In the meantime, I like to inspect my drain plug, make sure the threads are good, make sure the gasket's still good. You can reuse these plenty of times, but if they are damaged, whether it's the threads or the gasket, replace it. Now that the oil is down to a steady trickle, I'm gonna keep draining it, but I wanna clean up the exhaust the best I can. Use a brake parts cleaner, spray it down, and make sure you degrease it the best you can. Now this particular one is not going to look perfect, because this vehicle has had an oil leak for quite some time now, and a lot of this has been burnt into the exhaust, but I'm still gonna do my best and get the fresh oil off of it. Locate your oil filter, which, as I said earlier, it's right here next to the drain plug. Grab onto it. You may or may not need an oil filter wrench. Typically, you should be able to take it off by hand, unless someone over-tightened it. Looks like I do need an oil filter wrench. So they make different kinds. I have this one that looks like a strap basically, and it just grabs onto the filter. As you turn it, it'll tighten the strap and help you grip it. Provides some leverage. They also make the kind that are a cup, and the cup ones you slide onto the end and they grip onto the cutouts of the oil filter. Regardless of what you're using, unthread it. As you loosen this up, oil will come pouring out. So keep that in mind. Your collection bucket should be aimed right underneath it. Continue unthreading this. It's on the last thread. Try to remove it as gentle as you can so you don't make a mess. Inspect the filter housing area and make sure that the old gasket did not stick to it. The old gasket should still be on the filter, just like it is for us. If it's stuck up there, make sure you remove it because you don't want to add the new filter with its own gasket here and double gasket, and that will basically cause a major oil leak, which could result in catastrophic damage of the engine if you lose all oil. Clean out the area, make sure there's nothing wrong with these threads here. There shouldn't be. Make sure this mating surface is nice and clean. And now let's prime the new filter and install it. Here's our new filter. Make sure you get the correct one. It's important so that it flows properly. Refer to your owner's manual if you're unsure of what to use. Next, I like to prime my filters if they sit upright like this one does. This will usually avoid dry startups. So fill up the oil filter with the correct type of oil that this engine takes. In this case, it's 5W30. I like to fill it until it just barely reaches the threads, just like that, and then I'll let it soak in, give it a minute or two. As you can see, the oil is soaking into the filter. While that's happening, with a clean glove, make sure you take a little bit of oil and lubricate the gasket, the O-ring at the top here. This will do two different things. One, it'll help seal up, and two, it will prevent this rubber from getting stuck on there in the future, so that when you take off the oil filter for your next oil change, not only will it come off easier, but you are less likely to have this gasket get stuck on the oil filter housing. Before putting the new oil filter on, re-inspect the area to make sure it's still good. It is for me. Line up the new oil filter, thread it on, make sure it threads on smoothly like this. Otherwise, that means it's cross-threading, and that is not a good sign. You want to stop, resituate it, and then tighten it back up. Once it bottoms out, which is about right here, you want to go about 3/4 of a turn. So just remember the position of it, turn it, halfway, and you don't have to go the full 3/4. If about half a turn is all you can do before it feels like it's too tight, then just do that. Because of the positioning of it, I'm going to reuse the oil filter wrench to tighten it. I typically don't like to use this because it's very easy to over tighten it. However, like I said, it's hard to grip it here. So I'm going to put the filter wrench on here. Just give it a couple small turns. All right, that's about half a turn. It's nice and tight. You don't need to crank it down and completely crush that gasket, otherwise it actually might not seal up as good as you think it would. Now, let's cap off the drain plug. Line up the drain plug, start it in by hand, make sure it's not cross-threading. After I thread it in a few turns, I'm just gonna wipe off this drippage again. That way it doesn't get everywhere. Finish tightening it up. And let's torque it to spec, that way it doesn't leak or damage the threads. The torque for this is 18 foot-pounds. If you don't have a torque wrench that fits in here, or you don't even have access to one, just take the wrench and make it nice and snug. Basically, once it bottoms out, which is right about here, about 1/4 of a turn is all it takes. Remove your drain bucket and clean up the area one more time to ensure that nothing will drip on the ground, and that way, if you don't already have an oil leak, you won't confuse any leftover oil for a potential oil leak. With the truck back on the ground and the hood open, let's locate 2 things in the engine bay. One is going to be your oil filler cap right here. Take this off, set it aside. Number 2 is going to be your oil dipstick right here, which we will use to measure the amount of oil that we've put in. Now I know that this truck will take 6 quarts of oil, so after I put 6 quarts I know I'll be full, but I still like to check it every time, so pull this out and set it aside. Use a funnel if you need to, try not to spill everywhere. However, if you tilt the oil bottle on its side, you'll have a lot more control over the flow of the oil coming out of it. Now I'm going to add my 6 quarts of 5W30. With my 6 quarts added in, cap it off. And now let's check the level of the fluid. Wipe off the dipstick, especially on the lower half. Stick it down into the dipstick all the way. Make sure you seat it, and then pull it back out, and let's take a reading of the level of the oil. As you can see, you have the hash marks and then some dots or holes, I guess. The top one here is going to be full, the bottom one is going to be empty. If you added your 6 quarts, you should be right at the full mark. I'm a little bit over because the truck hasn't started yet, but as soon as it starts, runs, and the oil runs through the engine, it'll drop right down to the full mark. I know I'm good, so I'm going to put it right back in. And there you have it, oil change complete. Now you can take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.